Hi, Joe Straczynski here. Thought I would take a moment to make a little video about a topic that is kind of timely at the moment and bring people up to date on what the process is of getting a TV series on the air. We're currently in that position now with Babylon 5 and getting that process moving. And there's a lot of sort of misinformation or misunderstanding or bad information or mythology about how this process actually works. So I thought I would walk you through it and give you a peek behind the screen, behind the television screen, behind whatever screen you choose to use. I'm pretty open about these things. So let's start at basics and work our way up from there. The way a TV series gets made is it starts with an idea. A writer, usually, sometimes it can be a studio or an IP that comes into someone's hand, but usually it comes from a writer who believes in the story enough to put some time into it. And the first step in that, after you sort of talk to your agent, your agent tries to calm you down and say, don't bother, is you arrange for meetings either with network executives or development people to go in and pitch what that story is. And depending on where you are in the ladder of things, you either go in at the lower level development executives or you pitch directly to the heads of the network or the vice president in charge of something. The difference is, and this is a crucial difference, is that a lower level executive can say no, but they can't say yes. They don't have the power to say, great idea, go write this. They have to then take your idea and run it down the hall or run it upstairs or run on the hiking paths with it to find someone who can then say yes. The obvious downside of this is that to a certain degree you are held hostage by the ability of that executive to explain your idea to somebody else. After a while it turns into this game of whispers where you say, my show is about A, and the executive says to his or her immediate boss, well, it's a story about A and B, and by this time the story gets to the head of the network who can either buy it or not, it's about Z. And because picking up a project tends to bring with it the danger, if it doesn't work out well, a lot of executives at the lower levels are inclined to say no just on principle, because saying yes is scary to kick it upstairs because they're writing on what your ability is or is not. So either way, you better start with the development person. And by the way, a lot of development executives are really great. They're really smart, really incisive. I've had a number of really good relationships with them. This is all about the politics, not about the quality of the person involved. My attorney sitting off camera just said I should probably mention that part of it. So you pitch it, and either you work your way up or you walk in the door, and someone says to you, great idea, go write a pilot based on this. And you negotiate your price, your fee. You may have already pre-negotiated so that you can't hold anybody up in case you get the deal for more cash. And then you go off and you write. And usually they allow maybe about 6 to 8 weeks for the first draft of that pilot script. And the way that the timing works out is the networks are open for pitches from about June, I would say, through early September or mid-September. The streamers and cable outfits have a much more wide open calendar. You can pitch there pretty much year round, but we'll stay with the networks for now because it gives us a certain amount of structure. So you've now pitched it, you're on the script, and what you have to do is to explain the entire world you're creating and who the characters are in that one script. Consequently, they tend to be kind of on the talky side and saying things that may appear to be obvious, but are often needed to make sure that the audience understands what's actually being discussed. You turn in the first draft, and first you go to the studio and they have notes, and you have to do those notes. Then you go to the network and you get their notes. And of course, the downside is the network is seeing the draft after the network note. The network is seeing the draft after the studio notes have been implemented. So they're not actually seeing what you wrote; they're seeing what you got noted about. And sometimes there's good about that, sometimes there's not good about that. But it is, again, just part of the process. And then once you have your notes from the network, you are put to second draft and you go off and write. And here the calendar gets a little bit more stretched because they want the final draft of the script to come in usually right before the Christmas break. And the Christmas hiatus in Hollywood, it starts like mid-November and it goes through like the first or second week of January. Everybody just checks out and you're on your own. So you turn it in before the Christmas break, Christmas hiatus, and then they return full of turkey and full of bon home for their fellow human beings. And I hope I pronounced that correctly. And they begin to read the scripts, and based on what they see, they are either very excited or they're horrified. They're also, no matter how long it's been in development, the longer it's been in development, sometimes they can lose interest going to the next shiny thing. That's the thing about timing is you have to go in to pitch early if at all possible, because the networks have more money and they're more desperate for material early in the process. By the time it rolls around to August, September, they now spent most of the development money and they have a lot of stuff, so they're very much more picky at the end of that process. I try to go in early because I always look better with desperation. It's sad, but it's true. So back to January, they come in and they pick out the pilots they want to see put into production. And this goes into then pilot season. The difference between doing say a domestic drama or a family drama and science fiction or fantasy is that in the latter case, you have to build the entire universe. If you're doing a contemporary drama, you can just rent a location or build some sets, and they're pretty easy. There's 4 walls and lights, and you're ready to go. Obviously, there's more to the design elements. I'm just saying that in general, you don't have to create an environment. Whereas in science fiction and fantasy, you have to actually create that world down to the spoons. So that's part of it. You're doing a prep, and you're looking at casting options. And the problem, of course, is that everyone gets picked up to pilot at about the same time, which means you're now competing with everybody else in town who is going to be shooting a pilot episode. And that part of pilot season is brutal because everyone's chasing name actors and others who might be appropriate for their particular roles. And there's a real shortage in LA of talent that is not already committed to other projects, which is why you see a lot of actors coming in from out of Los Angeles, from Canada, from other countries, from New York, to make themselves eligible for pilot season. There is a great documentary, depressing as hell, but still great, called Camp Sunshine. It's about a hotel where a lot of actors from other places come and stay during pilot season, hoping to get cast on a pilot, because once you're on a pilot and you're on a series, the money train gets very serious very fast. So I highly commend it to you if you are looking for something really depressing to watch, but also enlightening. And there's some nice characters. Point being, you're fighting for cast, and then you have about 4 or 5 weeks of serious pre-production. Then you go into shooting, and for a pilot, you're talking about maybe a 2-week shoot if you're lucky. And then you edit and you turn it in. And then you wait for the pickups. And these are called the upfronts, when the networks go up to New York, wherever they're having their press conferences that particular year, to announce what they're picking up. And then when they might, in some cases, they're very positive and optimistic about it, they might give you a commission to write 2 or 3 scripts ahead of time, just so you can have something to work with if they do pull the trigger. And then once they've gotten all the testing done, they use focus groups a lot for these things. We had a focus group on Babylon 5 that was, I don't have words. They did not understand what science fiction was. I'll give you an example so you won't think I'm just being as bitter as I actually am about all this. A lot of them didn't like the pilot for The Gathering, and one guy in particular kept saying, I really hate this. And when the focus person who ran the group said, why? And he said, well, it's not science fiction. All right, the focus group person said, what would you consider to be good science fiction? Now, I'm in the next room, and there's a two-way mirror between us and the focus group. I'm peeling an orange. And when he asked, what would you consider good science fiction? The guy said, Power Rangers. I could not, it wasn't my intent, but as I'm peeling this orange, I heard Power Rangers, I spanged it off the glass. It just bounced off, I mean, but it startled everyone inside the room. I was told not to do that again. But that was almost more than I could handle. So they've done the focus groups, they've done testing, they've got a budget put together, and then they put you finally to series and they announce it at the upfronts and wherever they're doing it that year. And then you are off to the races. It is a very long, slow process. Between the time you walk in and pitch to the time when the series goes on the air, it's very often about maybe like a year and a half. I've seen it take even longer than that. And you have to really commit yourself to that process. So where Babylon 5 is now is the reimagining is in the holding pattern, if you will. The CW knew they were going to be sold, and they wanted to take the show and move it out of the line of fire. There were some shows that were being developed that they canceled. They said, no, we're going to do these, and they were dead. They picked up one that had a contractual obligation to be picked up, so they had to do that one. And it said to us, we don't know what's going to happen with the network, but we're putting you over here where it'll be safe. And then by the time the dust settles, we can then pull this back in and try and make this work. And so the head of the CW, Mark Pedowitz, is a huge fan of the show, which helps. And he back when he was originally on the air, he worked for Warner Brothers, and he really always wanted to see the episodes before they were broadcast because he wanted to know what's going to happen next. So I have great confidence in the CW and Mark Pedowitz to let me do what I do. And God knows, for the record, during the process of writing the Babylon 5 reimagining pilot, they never noted me on anything other than how we can help support the story, and we want to make sure that everything is clear. But there were no other band-aids at all. They said, look, you know this universe, you know the show, this is your thing, so we'll just get out of the way as much as we can and be here to support and help you. And they did, and that's exactly what they did. For the moment, that's where we are in Babylon 5, and that's the process by which shows are produced and created. So thanks for sticking around. I hope that was of some use or any use at all, frankly. I think just if you need some sound going on in your house while you're away to make people think you're still there, you can put this on infinite loop. And number one, they'll think someone's there. And number two, they'll think someone really annoying is there. So you've got it covered. That being said, I will end this now, and do stay out of trouble, and I will see you around.